Hello and welcome to another episode of Talk FS. My guest today is someone who's experienced just about every stage of career in financial services, from starting out as a young advisor to building and selling a successful wealth management firm to completely reinventing himself as a fintech investor and thought leader. Jason Butler didn't just build a business, he built a career with purpose. In today's episode, we unpack the lessons from that journey, from getting started to building something that lasts, knowing when to move on, and staying relevant in a fast-changing industry. This conversation is full of insights for anyone looking to build a long, meaningful career in financial services. Jason, welcome to the episode.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Great to be here.
So, first of all, your career started within financial services a while ago. So, let's start at the beginning. What led you into your career in financial services?
Well, it was completely by fluke because in 1990, in fact, 1989, I was working, believe it or not, at a car dealership in between things. I wasn't actually, didn't have any career aspirations at all. I wasn't particularly good at school. That doesn't mean to say I wasn't intelligent, but I just didn't go to a great school, and it wasn't really done to sort of do academically well. But I'm always curious, and I was working in this temporary job in this car dealership, and I remember I bumped into who eventually the individuals who recruited me into financial services the following year. It's a long story, but I'll keep it short. I ended up moving into a commission-only sales-based role working in central London. Bear in mind, I live down in Kent, in central London. And they taught me some good and bad things. They taught me discipline, work ethic, a system, how to find the right clients, and how to convince people to say yes. Okay, but that's where it finished. They didn't quite understand about technical knowledge, ethics, win-win psychology, and the principle of building a lasting career. It was a sales position, but that's how it was in the late 80s, very early 90s in the UK. And regulation was just starting. So long and short of it was I ended up in a sales organization. And within a year, I'd sort of learned, I built a client base from scratch. I knew no one. I'd never been to university. I didn't know any posh people or anyone who had high earning jobs. And I did it all by looking at newspapers that were 6 months old, writing down job ads for people at the time, which is an enormous money, 60,000 a year, which is now like 200 and something, 300,000 pound a year wages, writing down finance director jobs and all this, and then ringing directory inquiries to get the phone number of the company, and then ringing the people up and saying, I understand you've just taken on your new job. Well done. I specialize in working with high flyers who are moving ahead, who've got all sorts of issues that I need to deal with. Should we get together and have a chat and see what we can do? I can't promise anything. And I remember I built my business on being totally honest, but being methodical. And in that first year, I realized that actually I quite like this financial services. I quite like finding people. I quite like talking to people and finding out what's motivated them. And bear in mind, I didn't have a lot of money, so I was quite focused. I quite like talking to people who are earning a lot more than me. And it's a classic old fake it till you make it. I was very confident because for me, I was determined I was going to be successful, and being successful to me at that stage meant being rich. And I didn't really know what being rich meant, and it sounds a bit crass now. But I think the takeaway there is that we all have to know what our purpose and what our motivation is, and that will change at different stages in your life. And it's nothing wrong with being 21 and mean and hungry and wanting to earn a few quid, but it does evolve and it does change. And so keep checking in with your motivation, I think, is a very important point. But for me at that stage, it was just sort of surviving and then thriving. And I realized within a year that actually I had a thirst for knowledge. So I started taking very early what was called the Financial Advisor Competency Test, which is basically a watered down version of what you now would have as the foundational qualifications that the basic person coming into the advice profession would have to do. And I then realized within a year that was not the right home for me, that firm I was working in, very sales orientated. So I then went to work for an independent financial advisor, and I started taking my exams. And they thought I was completely nuts, but I kept on taking exams and reading. And the internet hadn't started until 1995, and this is 91, right? So I had to go to reference libraries. I had to get big exam books. So when everyone says it's difficult to learn, I haven't got time, you don't know half of it. I had to get physical books. I had to go to libraries. I had to buy things from bookshops and wade through paper and stuff. And so I started doing this, and then I realized that being intellectually curious and constantly learning is the way forward, because I started to realize I needed to understand the context of people's affairs. I thought, hang on, I've got to stand back here and look at the context, not just do they need a life assurance policy or a pension? Why don't I stand back and just work out and get them organised first of all? So I started off charging people an amazing fee at the time of £250 to tidy up their paperwork. And I was making at the time about £1,000 a month from doing 4 clients a month, new clients, of organising their papers. So that was £1,000 a month before I'd even started. But of course, getting organised got their trust, got the understanding, and therefore I could then basically, I could then start to identify more opportunities for them, which by dint of doing the right job, taking a slower step and just taking a step back, which of course all of your listeners now will know to varying degrees in their firms, know your client and really understanding their situation. But as I was doing the getting them organised, I was doing a lot more of the subjective work, and I was sort of finding out, how did they make their money, or how did they end up in their career, and what does good look like in the future? Because I was asking myself those questions. And remember, you don't have to be the same as your clients you're dealing with. You don't have to be absolutely in their same shoes. So if you're a young advisor or a young paraplanner, don't worry about older people. What you have to do, though, is have empathy. You have to try and put yourself in their shoes to understand why they think the way they do and why they are where they are with their finances. And we all know lots of very successful people are very disorganized, and that's a great business. And we'll come on and talk about AI and technology in a minute, but there's no technology in the world that's going to get a client organized, okay? If he or she hasn't got the time, inclination, or desire or motivation to do it. They might want it to be done, but they don't want to do the pain of doing it. And I found just getting people organized and knowing what they had was immense value. And that's that taking that big picture and stepping in their shoes, I think, was key. So long and short of it is then I worked in that next firm for about 5 or 6 years, and I took on more and more qualifications. I got my advanced financial planning certificate, which is now the advanced diploma, I think. And I also became a pensions transfers expert in 1995, 96. And I then worked for 1 year in another firm, a regional firm, and I became the pension transfer expert. And of course, no transfer could go through without me looking at it. And I was known as the blocker because I would say, this is not right. And so 2 in 3 transfers I was blocking, I wasn't allowing. And what it actually did, it forced those advisors to step up their game, to be much more clear about whether it's doing a triage. And so therefore, and this is another takeaway for your listeners, is that having standards, even if everyone around you is not up to the goods or not, we don't do it this way. I'm sorry, my standards are, I will treat someone like it's my mother or my brother or my best friend. And if this is not right, because either you haven't done your job right, or because the circumstances aren't right, it's not right. And so they all step their game. It's a bit like if you go and play squash or tennis or badminton with someone who's better than you, you're going to get a bit better, okay? But if they keep paying people like you, that brilliant tennis, badminton or squash player is going to get a bit worse. So you don't want to hang around people who are not very good for very long, because you are the sum total of the people you spend most time with. But so the takeaway there is to always have high standards, don't compromise, and don't hang around duds and losers or people who don't care. Okay, that's very important. So you might have to. So I knew I was in the right profession, the right sector, if you will, but I was never in the right home. And in sheer desperation, and I don't recommend this for many people because it is hard work and it's not for everyone, I started my own firm, not because I was good at running a business or wanted to run a firm, but couldn't find the right home either that would have me or that I would want to be in. As Groucho Marx said, there's no club he'd want to join that would have him. So the problem for me is I was starting to charge fees, as you know, for added value things like getting people organised, second opinions, all these sort of things, sitting with trustees. And as I got more qualifications and I got more experience and I started to get more of a reputation, I realised the only thing was to start my own firm. The only problem was I wasn't very good at running a business. And so I spent, let me think now, I must have spent the best part of 5 or 6 years finding every way not to run a business, because of course I couldn't do it all on my own. And as soon as you start hiring people, and I know you guys are in the recruitment business, oh my God, hiring people, what a nightmare. And of course you do that whole thing of you end up taking on lots of hungry mouths. They all get fed before me. I'm ended up treating them like, having to look like little children sometimes, keeping them all in check. And I ended up with a team of 12, but I was spending more time running that team than I was actually dealing with the clients. And the long and short of it was I was always trying to make things beyond me. I didn't want it all to be about me. And I knew I was good with clients. And I knew I had reasonable intellect and I could problem solve quite quickly. And this is the other takeaway for your listeners, is that developing your critical thinking skills. So even if you are using ChatGPT or Claude or any of those, that is not going to help you think and critique things, and it will make stuff up and it will give you mistakes. All it can do is be a productivity tool, but you have to do the primary learning. You have to know the difference on a 2-year ownership of business property relief shares versus lifetime transfer and death transfer, because ChatGPT will get it wrong. I know, because I've tested it. Technology is no excuse for you doing deep learning, constant learning, and also double checking. Anyway, the long and short of it, that business nearly went out of business, not because we weren't delivering a great service, we were, but the cost base and the deflection of my time managing people was taking me in the wrong direction. So don't think just because you don't like the firm you're in that you should necessarily rush out and start your own firm. It might be right for you, perhaps with 2 or 3 other people, but it probably won't be if you don't have any clients, unless there's some specific thing you're going to do a management buy-in and you've been there a while, and that's different. I can understand buying into a firm, but starting a firm from scratch is a big tall order. Just because you're a good planner or a good power planner or a good operational person doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be good at running a highly regulated advice business, even as an appointed representative. And then basically from there, I moved on. I sold the business to a consolidator who then proceeded to implode, and they paid me and the bank all the money that was owed for us. And then I bought the business back for the same price that I paid for it, but I said I'm going to pay you over 20 years. So that was a brilliant deal because I had a clause that enabled me to buy the business back. So I bought the business back, and we turned that, from the day we bought that business back, it was profitable every single month until the time I left the firm in late 2015. I sold it to my 2 other partners who started out as managers, who I brought in to the business, who came in, put some capital in, and they bought me out. And the reason I left was because I realised actually I wasn't very good at that stage of my life. I wasn't emotionally available for clients, and I had built a machine that meant I was a small cog in a well-oiled machine. And we were using cloud-based software years before anyone had. We had checklists. We were doing wealth snapshots, not fact finds. We were doing interactive financial planning using screens. This is before the internet. We were using Skype years before anyone had heard of Zoom. So we were fee for service. We were charging people fixed fees plus either a small variable fee or no fee for the portfolio. It was planning-centric. We were liaising with other professionals. So we built all the things that you hear of now. We were doing all of those. Every single thing was an innovation that we did. And that was because I was trying to always look at what kind of firm would I want. And this is the funny thing. I've recently been looking for a financial planning firm to work with me and my wife, believe it or not. And can I find the right firm? I think I might have found a firm. And I've interviewed 10. And if there's 10 things I'm looking for, the most I can find a firm does is 7. So, they might be charging asset-based fees, or they're not planning-centric, or their investment philosophy is wrong, or they don't really understand about intergenerational planning, or they don't really have a service for the younger generation like my daughters. So that's an interesting one. So even now, and that seems funny looking at it from the customer's point of view. And I would really commend one of the things, I'll tell a quick story. I remember when this was about 2012, and we have checklists for everything. So review, customer, this is before automation had come in, right? So we were using Salesforce, and we built it and had it customized. We had checklists for everything, and you moved through and moved it to different people. So it was early stage automation. And I remember the review checklist had 69 steps in it. And I remember thinking, bear in mind, I didn't do all of this different work. And I remember saying, just print me off the checklist. I'm going to take that home. And I used to have a long train journey from central London. And I just went through it all and I put lines through. Can we get rid of this? Why do we need to do this? Why are we sending the client this? Why is this step needed? Can we get rid of this? And I went through it and I worked out, just having a quick look, that at least half the steps could be removed. So then I had a workshop with the staff, and this is really important for anyone listening, is you must question everything, right? Trust no one, believe nothing, question everything. Not to the extent that you're a pain in the backside, but that you are, why are we doing it like this? Is there a better way? And don't change it for the sake of it if it really does work and it's necessary, but question it. Be your own questioner, be your own devil's advocate. And when we sit around the group of the paraplanners, the administrators, the senior staff, and I went through and said, listen, I'm not here to tell you how to do this, and I'm not saying this is all wrong. I'm here to question it. Bear in mind, I'm the founder of the firm, and I do a very small part of this, but I'm just looking at this. I'm thinking about making your lives easier. So, and we make more money, the clients have less hassle, less friction, everything goes quicker, everyone's a winner. This is all about everyone winning. And when I went through it all, pretty much the input, eventually everyone sort of piped up, well, yeah, I've never really believed in doing that step, and I don't know why we're doing that, and clients don't like that. And before you know it, they found even more. We got the 69 steps down to 20. So let that be a lesson for you. And I said, well, why has it required me to raise the issue? Bear in mind, I don't do all this work. You're the ones grinding it out. And it's that kind of, can we do this better? Okay. And what's the implications if we don't find a better way? Because every business, if you do not innovate, if you don't improve, if you don't evolve, then someone else is going to be, and you're going to become irrelevant. So that's an interesting story. Anyway, the long and short of it is that I got to 2015 and I was deeply unhappy. And this is a really important thing, is that despite me earning a lot of money, and I mean a very, very tidy income, I was just married to the same wife. I had two lovely kids. I lived in the same house. I don't wear watches. I don't have any aspirations for anything flash, but I was earning a lot of money. And I thought to myself, I'm not enjoying this. And the reason I didn't enjoy it was because the firm was too small for me. And when I say the firm was too small, there just wasn't enough. We'd done so much innovation, and obviously now looking with AI and automation and stuff, there's still loads of things happening. I'd done every kind of, and this is an important point, soft skills training. And it was the soft skills training that made me really think about my own life. And so one of the things I would recommend people do in this age of AI is, if you can do anything to develop your emotional intelligence, your empathy, your listening skills, and your ability to connect and understand people, do it. Also, you should, no matter what role you are, go and get yourself on a public speaking course, because if you learn to do public speaking, you have to get your point across to a very diverse group of people in a very short order. And it doesn't matter whether you're presenting in a business meeting or whether you're doing a big talk in front of 1,000 people. So developing your empathy and listening skills and your public speaking skills will make you more confident. They will make you more articulate. They will make you a better person. And as a result of me doing all this, I realized actually I was in the wrong job. And what I really wanted was a much bigger train set and to make a bigger difference to people. Not that I decried my previous 25-year career, because I've been in the profession then by 25 years. And I thought, actually, I want to go in a different direction. I like financial services. I like money. I like personal finance. I like the psychology of money. I like the help and the hinder it can be. I understand it can be a blockage for you, but I want something more. And I just need to be released from the firm. So it wasn't easy, but I arranged my exit from the firm on reasonable terms. So it was reasonable to me and it was reasonable to them. I gave them a bit of time to pay me. And then I spent 2 years just going on my kind of guru journey for a couple of years, midlife crisis at 46 to 48, which was great fun. And just the thought of going to the cinema at 2:00 in the afternoon and not having to worry about my diary. I know it sounds silly, but when you're very heavily scheduled and you've got lots going on and your importance and your status is tied up with your job, it's just nice to strip all that away. And that's what I did. Anyway, long and short of it was, in 2018, I was doing public speaking about learning about money and the power of money. I was talking about the emotional side of money and why do we buy what we buy. And if I look out and I will tell a story of, I've just come in here and I've seen all those lovely cars in the car park. I said, I don't see that 6 Series BMW, and I don't see that lovely Porsche. All I see is £1,000 a month, £700 a month. All I see is lack of flexibility. All I see is draining me at my ability to build wealth and flexibility. So I'm not here to tell you what to do. So, and again, it was great fun doing that, and I did that, and I was getting paid very well for it, and I didn't do any advertising, but I was just entertaining people and telling stories and making it okay for people to learn about money. And there's another takeaway for your listeners, is that lots of people are embarrassed about money. They have shame about money. They're defined by money, particularly now with the cost of living being so high and the cost of property, is that there is a hell of a lot of baggage about money, because it's not money itself, it's what it represents. You've either got too much and you feel embarrassed, or you don't have enough, you feel guilty and shame or anger, or you feel overpowered that you're never going to get where you want to get, or you feel that money is the thing that's in control. And doing those talks, and I did many of those, I mean, probably over 100 of those talks. And you get to learn when you're talking to an audience, and going from one-to-one clients to going to a big audience. I then realized actually there's a power in the crowd. You can say things. And I used to say lots of funny stories about me and my wife and my children and clients that I've known and stuff. And it would make people laugh. And people would say, oh, asking for a friend. Again, learn that people have to be found their own way of learning. And from that, there was a firm called Salary Finance, who's still going today, and I still know the CEO. Someone was in the audience of one of these talks, and they said, you've got to get this guy in to do your live events. He's so funny. It was almost like a stand-up comedy act. And because I was prepared, I'd prepared for it, but I was just telling real stories and making it funny, and also showing my own frailties, telling the stories about the debt collectors coming when I was little and the MPs in the meter, and we'd never seen loads of films to the end because the electric went out and stuff like that. So you colour things with stories, and this is another takeaway for people, is your ability to tell a story or to understand someone else's story is key to empathy, and it's key to connection. And in this age of technology, connecting with clients and how you make them feel is, I think, really a key point. And also how you make your colleagues feel. That's another thing to bear in mind. If you are in the wrong team, or you're in the wrong culture, and you're expecting to get better results and being the lone ranger in your own firm, standing up for what's right or standing up for innovation, if it's not moving, if it's not going to happen there, you're probably in the wrong firm. And we're all guilty, whether we work for someone or whether we hire people or we're managing people, we're all guilty of leaving it too late. We're all guilty of flogging a dead horse. I'm sure we've all been in a relationship, prior to our current relationship, where we went out with someone, we knew they weren't Mr. or Mrs. Right, but they were Mr. or Mrs. Right now. And you knew it, but you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time hanging out with someone who's not long term. Same as a business. It might be a stepping stone. It might be part of experience. It might be fun. It might be a learning thing, but just staying in the same firm or the same role and expecting yourself to grow and thrive is going to be a difficult thing. It may be the right firm, but you need to step up a gear and grow outside of your comfort zone, because you can't grow in comfort zones. So that's another important thing. Always look to go beyond it. So long and short of it is, I got headhunted to join that firm, and I said, well, I've never had a job. I've only ever worked for myself. And they said, well, I can work for us part-time. Just do it for a year. Well, I did that job for 6.5 years, and I designed all of the financial education programs for people like Tesco and lots of NHS trusts and some of the biggest IT, some of the biggest companies in the country. And I also did live events where I would answer live questions that were posted through Slido. So I got asked over 1,000 questions in 6.5 years. And you can imagine, can't you, everything. There was very simple questions. Like I've tried to, and it's all about controlling your spending, most of it, even if you're really wealthy. I still run my spending plan like I did 15 years ago, and I learned how to do it. And I'm not, I'm not up against it, but I still have that discipline. And so I think that was really interesting, teaching people the basics. And I would say things like stop using the word budget. Let's use the word spending plan. Stop using the word retirement or pensions. Let's use the word financial independence. Let's use the word freedom. Let's use the word FU money, whatever you want to use it, but use an empowering language. So that's another takeaway for you. If you as an individual are using unempowering and negative language, whether it's to yourself internally, whether it's to your family and friends, whether it's to your work colleagues, or whether it's to clients and customers, that it can be how we speak is just as important as what we say. And the language we use is really important. So we're not an industry. This is a beautiful profession. Okay, industries chunkle out. Nothing wrong with that. But an industry is about manufacturing and distributing. Okay, there is product, but the products are subservient, we know, in a commodity to the real thing, which is connecting clients with what have they got, where do they want to go, and what's probably the optimum choice that they should make or could make. So I did that, and it was only at the end of last year that I finally managed to extricate myself from this part-time job after 6.5 years, and I had to end up getting 3 or 4 outside experts to take my role. And that's the other thing. You need to be, and I had worked for a year to find replacements who were external contractors who could take on the role of what I was doing, because I was instinctive at doing it, and people who could trust to answer live questions. So that's the other thing, is if you want to promote, you want a promotion, I think you need to train your next person who's going to take over from you. You need to be selecting the person who's going to take over from you. And if the management don't see that, then you need to bring that to the party. So if you feel obligated that, there's no one else can do my job, well, you need to train someone else to do your job, or you need to find that person, or you need to start by writing the job spec if you don't have one. And, lots of us, our jobs evolve, don't they? Lots of our jobs evolve. And we end up doing lots more things that weren't on our original job spec. So when you write it all down, you can probably find there's at least a third to a half of your job that you're starting to work out, can I automate this? Can I drop it? Or do I need to bring someone else in, or someone else needs to take that off my thing? So that's also part of your own personal growth. And I gave the financial wellbeing work in the workplace up at the end of last year, and I totally focus now on my fintech angel investing.
Fantastic. Well, what a superb synopsis of your career that brings you to your most recent chapter. Throughout your whole career there, I notice a lot of self-awareness, a lot of reflection, and a lot of lifelong learning. Where do you feel that came from?
Well, I don't want to give the old sob story, but I had a particularly tough upbringing, as many people do. So I can totally empathise if money's tight in the family, if there's low expectation, if it's chaotic, if you've got neurotic parents, if you don't have, like in my case, a male role model. I was lucky that I didn't have a father figure that was a good role model, but I did have male role models. So you can't look at what you don't have. You have to look for where it is. And I think where it came from was that I was always looking to get the most out of life. And I was always trying to look at what I could do as opposed to what I couldn't do, where the opportunity was as opposed to where the impediment was. Okay, my wiring is high energy to abundance, to be moving forward, and to being better than I was. Does that mean I've got bad attributes? Of course I have. But you cannot focus on your weaknesses and the attributes that aren't great, because that's my wiring. And so my energy also means that I can be on the edge of neuroticism, because my parents were like that. So I have to be aware of that. So I have to make sure that my environment and my routine and my things that I do are taking the energy part of me and not getting to the neurotic side of me. So every person out there, anyone listening to this, you will have superpowers that no one else has. But you'll also have impediments, and you will know what they are. You don't need to keep reminding yourself, and you don't need other people to tell you. But what you do need to do is recognize those and design routines, habits, processes. So, for instance, I've been doing physical exercise I hated sports at school. It was me and the overweight kid who was chosen last for the football team. That's how bad I was. So I was never any good at sports. But what I was good, I'm very self-disciplined in the sense that like anyone, I like a beer and a pizza and things like that. But I have always, from the age of 18, done exercise, physical exercise. And I've always done, since I was 30, done meditation. So those two things are a root, and no matter how busy I was or how much I was earning, how much everyone needed, my exercise regime, even if I could only do 20 minutes on a cross trainer, or I could go for a long walk, I like get my heartbeat up for 20, 30 minutes. I remember when I used to work at Salary Finance, I got there once a month for a day, and my lunchtime, I would go for a walk to Wormwood Scrubs prison, go all the way around it and come back for two reasons. It was 1.5 mile walk, 1.5 miles walk all the way around, all the way back to the office. And secondly, it reminded me how grateful I was not to be in that prison. That was a symbolic thing. And I used to look past and I thought, God, I'm out here and they're in there. Who knows? Could have gone a different way. So yeah, it's a case of working with what you've got, not what you haven't got. Recognizing what can be a problem. And I can run people ragged. I can wear people out. God knows how I stayed married for 30 years. It's amazing. And everyone says, she needs an OBE for services to to business. But that's an interesting thing, is that if you have clients who are introspective or introvert, that doesn't necessarily mean they're not articulate or they're shy. It means they get energy from within. Whereas an extrovert could be quite quiet, but gets energy from other people. Okay, so I get energy from interacting with people, but I don't get energy from doing one-to-one deep dives with people. I can do it, and this is why I ended up giving up advising, and this is why you could be a great paraplanner or a great technician, but may not make that absolute full kind of client, because it requires a level of emotional connection with someone, which you will thrive on, or it will suck the life out of you. And in my case, I actually was a better technician than I was a client advisor. I could do it, but it was a bit like we can all do decorating. If we really think it through, if we really take our time, if we really look at all the videos, if we get all the right, but life's too short. So there's things that we can do really well that we love. There's things that we can do okay, but we don't love. And there's things that we can't do very well and we don't love. And I think the key is to figuring that out. And so I can understand what it's like to be a client-facing advisor. I can also understand what it's like to be a power planner. I can also understand what it's like to be an operations person, because I also understand what it's like to be the marketing and communications person. And so therefore, in all my fintech investments, as I always say, I'm rich enough never to have to work again, And I don't say that to brag. I mean that in the sense that, but I'm not that rich that when I make investments into fintechs, I'm not worried about the money, losing the money. And so therefore it makes me be very thoughtful. And this is a takeaway for your people listening, is people will hire you, and you should hire people because of their attitude, not their skills. Because you can always teach skills, you can always learn experience, you can always get knowledge, you can always develop camaraderie with people, but you cannot create attitude. And so that ability to have the right attitude, and that's what I look for in the founders that I've backed. And my founders are fearless people, but they are humble. They are prepared to ask questions. They won't take the status quo. They will question things. They do want to make the world a better place. Oh, and by the way, they do want to become rich as well. But they want to become rich because they've created value in the world. And this is the other thing. There's nothing wrong with you as a professional earning a very good income and perhaps your compatriots, your school colleagues or your college or uni friends or whatever, or family, they might be on a different level to you. But you don't have to say sorry or feel embarrassed for earning a lot because you're working in a highly regulated sector. You have to get a high level of knowledge. If you get it wrong, it can be a real problem. And I know that from experience. Over the years, my firm has made operational mistakes that cost money that we had to put right, not because we were negligent in the sense that we were willfully doing something wrong, but something went wrong. Someone got put in the wrong portfolio because the drop-down box was chosen wrong. Okay, so we redesigned the drop-down box. But the point there, I think, is you've got to be trying to be the best version of you. And that's really what it's all about. And as I say, the fintechs that I'm looking at now, so, I was an early stage investor in Finamised. That's the, financial news in 3 minutes. Loved it. And that got sold to Aberdeen. I was an early stage investor in Timeline, which I'm still a shareholder in. And their focus is, the financial planning has to lead. LiveTrack, which is the tracking your plan based on the portfolio. Well, I created that idea 15 years ago, but the technology wasn't around. So I said, well, this is really what I want people to look at, is I want them to look at their progress, not in terms of the value of their portfolio, but plotting it against the plan that we originally set and see how it's varied. That's called LiveTrack in Timeline. And then they sort of said, well, okay, now we do model portfolios because actually that's a commodity. So let's get it as cheap as we possibly can. So they did that. Then they said, okay, we might as well do a platform because actually they're too expensive. And that could be if you want it. So their whole focus is a bit like Amazon. And this is what I love, this idea of doing more and more for less and less. Obviously, you've got to be commercial, but their point is, how do we make the client have a great experience with their advisors? How do we make the advisor's life easier? How do we do more for less? And it's the Amazon approach to financial services for the advisor community, which is what I love. Same with Multiply AI. Their whole thing is, let's just automate the back office. Let's make your life easy so you can focus on the things that matter. And I think, I'm not sure about your people that you deal with, but most advisors I speak to and technicians and support staff, they're as busy as they've ever been. And if they could just create more capacity, but in a way that still makes them feel fresh and not like they're just doing a sausage machine, and that the clients all get the care and attention they need and feel special, the clients probably will get better outcomes, a better experience, the firm will make more money, and the individuals delivering the work and delivering the client experience, they will have more fun and they will enjoy the work because they'll be focusing on the bit that only a human can do. And so if I think about AI, one of my businesses, Money Means, has created an interactive agent called ADA, Artificial Intelligence Digital Advisor. And it's not designed to replace an advisor, but what it does do is it enables a person to have a WhatsApp exchange with someone about their money. Oh, do you want to connect your bank account? Want to have a look at that? Let's give you some insights. Oh, are you on track for retirement? And in a way, it triages people to really become a bit like, you talk to a mate on WhatsApp or whatever. My brothers are always WhatsApping me. What do you think of this, Joe? But it's a safe space that's been particularly built in a safe way that it doesn't go off and hallucinate and make stuff up or go down the wrong path or start talking out of turn. And it's personalizing that interaction so that actually that person may need an advisor. They might need to do certain things before they engage an advisor. And if that's what that interactive AI tool, which is beyond anything you've seen out there at the moment, it took 3 years and a couple of million quid to build, and 12 very bright people constantly working on it, constantly testing it. But they are people with a financial planning background who have high empathy levels. And so therefore it's different. It's not about buying a product. But what it does do is it says, listen, there's going to be people who are going to need to take advice. And their affairs don't fit into easy boxes, and there is nuance. And this is where the financial planning firm of the future and the advisory firms of the future have a really strong part. you have to help the clients understand what matters to them, and you have to help them prioritize. And then, if necessary, you have to help them take action. And that is really what the job is about. Now, if you overlay the regulatory requirements, consumer duty is just it's just common sense to me. You've got to begin with the end in mind. If you don't think someone's going to have a great outcome working with you, then you shouldn't take them on. Okay? If their expectations of what a good relationship looks like is different to yours, and you haven't got that resolved at the beginning, you're going to have a client who's never going to refer, who's always begrudgingly paying their fees, who's probably bad mouthing you to people. It's almost like in a way, technology, whether it's back office, whether it's front office, whether it's client engagement, whether it's marketing and data analysis, whether it's creating the suitability reports, it's all designed to help you be more efficient, so that the small number of 30-odd thousand people we've got who are regulated in the UK, they could probably deal with 5 times the number of people. And then those that can't or shouldn't be using them, the automated tools will be dealing with them until such times they're ready or not, as the case may be. So I'm actually excited that I think that technology for me is a great enabler for forward-looking advice firms to really re-envisage. And I would say, imagine that you started fresh in a firm. Would you run your firm exactly and your client proposition, and how would you do your work? Would you do it exactly as it is now? It's a bit like pre-iPad, before iPads and before touchscreen phones. I remember this is a true story. The internet had just come out, and we used to have a thing called dial-up modem. This is going to be funny for a lot of younger people. We used to dial up to get into the internet for a really dodgy sounding modem that took about 3 minutes to connect, and it made all funny whirring noises to go and get your emails. Then you download your emails, then you would click off because it was a telephone call, It's just unbelievable, isn't it? That's what we did to get. And I said to my wife at the time, I said, you know what? I think when the internet thing is on all the time, like a light switch, and when you can touch, this is the TV at the time, I didn't know about tablets. I said, when you can touch the TV and you don't need a keyboard or the monitor, I think that's going to be when it's really going to take off, because I think that's what's needed. And my wife tells everyone at dinner parties this, because it's the proudest thing, one of the proudest things, she says I'm a visionary. She goes, Jason, you were so right. It was so obvious at the time. So let's think about this now. No one will want to take advice from a doctor unless he's consulting AI. But they don't want him consulting ChatGPT. They want him consulting a specialist medical AI that's been properly built, that's properly curated, that's got guardrails and protected and trained properly. Just as I don't think anyone's going to want to take advice from a real advisor unless they know they've got all this technology but properly built for financial services behind them. So it's kind of like, I think this is a golden age. I think you have to, if I had my time again and I was running an advice business, there's a brilliant guy called Robin Melly. He runs a company called Matrix Capital, and he's the example of, he will never want to stop working until he can't work, or he's pushed out or carried out, because he loves what he does. And what the point I want to make about Robin is that he specialises in dealing with court protection work, people with lasting powers of attorney, sudden money winners from he did the premium bond winners for 8 years. He had the contract for 8 years. And if you watch some of his LinkedIn posts, he will tell you about situations he's experienced, and he's demonstrating deep level expertise in a niche. So you either are a generalist dealing with a range of people, and that's one model, or you become niche. And if you really want to become like the go-to person, the high value, niche is a really good way. What that niche will be was down to you, but it's not just a demographic. He's dealing with people, both the children of elderly parents, the elderly parents. He's dealing with people who've lost capacity, people who've got capacity. He's dealing with trusts. It's very difficult to automate that. It's very difficult to algorithm it. It's very difficult to put that into automation. You can automate lots of the processes, but the judgment and dispensing the advice, that's the bit where the high value. So either working a firm that's really, really adopting technology to the nth degree so that you can be the best version of you as a generalist, or if you really want to become a rock star and really love the client interaction and that's your calling, then I would niche myself. I would really become the go-to person. So it might be, for instance, my business owner, I always love to say that the people I've backed so far, I've had 3 people I've backed to become multi-millionaires, okay? From nothing to multi-millionaires. And that might be your niche. So Alan Smith at Capital, he deals with exiting entrepreneurs. That's his niche. That's his firm's niche. So there's just a few things there. And I think I've never been more excited about what personal financial services can do and offer, and I think it's a golden time. So I'd be excited if you're young. And just one final thing I'd say about if you're young, don't be worried about being young and your clients being older. I won lots of my clients when I was in my 20s and early 30s, precisely because I was young, because I was a lot younger than the people, and they knew that I'd be there to help their children and I'd be there after them. And sadly, my clients did die off, and I was that voice of reason, and I was a trusted person in the family, and that was an amazing privilege. But it was very, very foresight, and that's when now what I look for. I'm looking at people who are in their late 30s to help my daughters and possibly my wife if I pass away or get ill. So youth is actually your superpower.
Fantastic. And within that element there where you're saying about the niche and how technology is going to change the process, you said earlier on in our conversation, you think now's really the time to build your emotional awareness, your emotional capacity. And if there's anything to build your training skills, is that area. And I think that ties in so well with what you've gone on to say about the automation process, is have deeper conversations. And like you said, they're busy. A lot of people we're speaking to are busier than ever, but also their time is being freed up if they're leaning into the technology. So use that additional time to go deeper.
Yes.
Do you agree?
I found in my experience, my clients didn't want another friend. They didn't come to me to have a friend. So I didn't need to go playing golf with them and hanging out with them and all this stuff. Okay. That was just my experience. It may be different in regional firms or provincial firms, but what they do want is someone that they can trust, someone who will listen to them, someone who will ask them smart questions that are not coming from a position of love and respect, and I mean that in the widest sense, and more importantly can challenge them, but challenge them and has their best interests at heart. And I always remember, even when I wasn't the fully formed, perhaps more polished person I am now, I always remember clients when I would ask them for feedback. And, we did this feedback loop. They said, okay, Jason has evolved, him and his firm, over the years, and it's very, very slick and professional compared to the early years, say, but we always never doubted he had our best interests at heart. And I think that's the point, is if you can have your colleagues, your firms, your clients, your friends, your relatives' best interests at heart, and interact them to the level that they allow you to, and make it look for opportunities to do that. It's all about how you make them feel. It's not the process as such. It's just the best conversations you ever have are the one where you are listening, and they say, "It's been really great talking with you." Well, they haven't talked with you; they've talked at you, and they are the best. They are the hardest conversations to have. But you learn more about people by listening to them. Or more importantly, they ask something about you, try and get it back to them. And it's this thing about listening. So here's a little takeaway. If you do nothing after listening to today, if you could try and become a better listener, regardless of your role in financial services, it will make you better at home. It will make you better with your friendship groups. It will make you better with your colleagues. And more importantly, it will make you better in any client interaction. A thoughtful, less but more thoughtful questions and comments, I think, will make you a better person. And again, that's not a technology thing. That's not a qualifications thing. That's not even an experience thing. That's just an awareness thing. And as I say, it's taken me 35 years to become an overnight success. But that is the thing that I wish I'd done more of when I was younger and less talking.
I totally agree with that. And I think that builds onto a point of, with everything that's going on, the one thing that you always have control of is your reputation and how you're perceived. And that is something you've always got to be aware of.
And yes, and you're right. And I think in the recruitment world, for instance, in a world of AI screening, of one size fits all, we're all the same. Don't tell me how great you are, demonstrate how great you are. So, have you volunteered? I mean, for instance, I did 2 years work. I've just put a CV together for a voluntary role I want to do in a trustee position. And I put my CV together. Bear in mind, I've only ever had one CV, and in it, I put the fact that I did volunteer at Citizens Advice for 2.5 years. Every Wednesday, I dealt with 600 people, some of the most challenging things ever. And I didn't really think anything of it. I enjoyed doing it. They couldn't do anything for me other than give me fulfillment of helping people. I learned a lot about not judging people. We did have some people who were what I call would be gilding the lily or, taking the mickey on some things. But most people were genuine. And I actually became a lot more not forgiving, but a lot more sanguine about people's situations. And I put that on the CV, and they said, you know what, it's really interesting. Your career is very unusual, but also to have I dealt with very rich people, high earning people in my early career, one to one. Then I did the workplace stuff with big groups, then the public speaking. And then you've done this one to one with vulnerable groups. So I've kind of covered the whole spectrum. And perhaps volunteering might be a way that you improve your skills. They might be a way that whether it's for your professional body, whether that's for a local group or whether it's a youth group or something, but something where you volunteer even a small amount of your time to go beyond yourself will actually make you appear slightly different. And I know now AI isn't just looking for the buzzwords and the evidence for the buzzwords. So if you're industrious and you're well organized, you need to demonstrate that. But it's also looking for this extra dimension. And I know, because I know the companies that build the algorithms, but the point here is they're looking for extra dimensions that make you more of a human. And it's a paradox, isn't it? We're using AI to do sifting to find people who are more human. And if you can demonstrate that through your actions, whether that's volunteering, whether that's whatever you've done, your hobbies, I think that's something that makes people want people who are people. We're human sort of beings, not human doings. And I think that's something to bear in mind. Become the best version of you, and that will constantly be changing.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think that's a perfect place to end, really. What a lovely message to end on. So, Jason, thank you so much for sharing your journey. Been amazing to listen to the stages in your career and the journey you've gone on, and how you've always been looking to innovate yourself and your businesses you've been involved in, right through from the financial planning now to being involved in your angel investing and your technology firms you're part of. So, really appreciate you coming on today. And for our listeners, if you want to learn more about Jason and his work, we'll make sure we've got links in the description below. Find him on LinkedIn, and Jason's popping up everywhere, sort of in different formats, whether it's online or offline. So we'll make sure we put some links in the description below. But yeah, thank you, Jason, so much.
It's a pleasure.